This episode of Film Riot's brought to you by B&H Photo and Squarespace. Spaces for squares. Today on Film Riot, we're going to give you everything you need to know to start writing your first script. And later, we get to our very first Full Sail interview. I know. Bring on the comments. What comments? It's about time. It's been in the bumper for over a year. It hasn't been a year. It's almost a year. Oh.
In the beginning, Adam bites the apple. In 1903, the first narrative film was made. In 93, Spielberg says F you to evolution. And in 2009, Film Riot is released to the world.
Want to be a filmmaker? Well, so do I. Let's figure it out. We're going to be following Trying Films from pre to post-production as we make our latest short film, Tell. Along the way, we're going to be showing you how to accomplish great effects with little to no budget. And every now and again, we'll be jumping over to Full Sail University to get you advice from the pros.
So grab some popcorn and get comfortable. This is Film Riot. Welcome to Film Riot, the show that takes the mystery out of the effects and techniques to go into some of your favorite Hollywood films. I'm your host, Ryan Conley. Now, I'm sure you've heard in the bumper for close to a year now that I've been planning on shooting a short film called Tell. Now, this is going to be different than anything you've seen from me before, being the fact that it's a psychological thriller. Now, I wanted to get to Tell way sooner, but scheduling everything turned out to be a lot harder than anticipated. But I'm happy to say my script for Tell is finally complete and ready to go, which is why today's episode is all about screenwriting. Now, screenwriting can be broken up into two sections. The first section being conceptualizing and actually writing the script, and the second section, which is what to do with your script once you've finished writing it. Next week, we're going to be getting into the second section, but this week is going to be all about the first section, how to actually write your script. Pimp! To write a script, first you need a story. The what, when, where, and who your script will be about. If you have it, then great. If you don't and you're trying to come up with one, write what you know, what you're passionate about. Now, that's not to say you can't use your imagination and write sci-fi or any other kind of fantasy world genre. It just means that your story has to be something that you can personally relate to. For instance, if you've never had your heart broken, how could you possibly write a character that has? You couldn't. You would basically just be stealing from things you've seen before, and that's when your story is going to start to become contrived. Another thing you're going to want to keep in mind when writing your script is if you're going to shoot it yourself on a low budget, you might want to stay away from special effects, large casts, and exotic locations. Think with your resources in mind. If your friend owns a coffee shop, try to center your story around that. Now, once I have the idea for my story, I typically sit down and write an outline, which is an overview of your story from start to finish with all the important beats. If you're writing a feature, an outline is a great tool to help you stay on course and sane. Another thing I'll do to make sure I stay on course with the tone of the film while I'm writing is to pick a playlist of music to listen to. For Tell, it was the soundtracks for The Orphanage, The Sixth Sense, and Vacancy. Also, having some music that sets the tone is a great way to get yourself back in the right frame of mind when you sit down to write again after being away from a long period of time. But that's all I'm going to say for now. The rest, I'm going to leave to the much more capable hands of Full Sail's Dustin Lee. Take it away! And now to you, Janelle. I've always wanted to do that.
Hey guys, we're at Full Sail University in Orlando, Florida to catch up with Dustin Lee, the writing instructor. Now you guys send in the questions and we're gonna ask them. Let's go. Thanks so much for meeting with us, Dustin.
My pleasure.
Before we go through these questions, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do here at Full Sail.
Okay, well, I'm the course director for storytelling, which is essentially our screenwriting class here at Full Sail. Oh, you want me to go longer?
Yeah,
She's like, tell me more.
All right, our first question is from Trent Ryan on Twitter, and he would like to know, where exactly do you get ideas for scripts?
Well, just engaging life is an idea. Screenwriters are always constantly eavesdropping on conversations, listening to the table across or next to them at a restaurant, and you're just sort of constantly aware and engaging life from all facets, and usually by the end of the day something will hit you and say, wow, this is the next great television show, film idea, what have you.
So it's a lot like writing what you know then.
You do want to write what you know. If you get beyond what you know, then you're going to delve into projects that you've seen before, and now it becomes cliche rather than something new or special. But if it's something that you have experienced personally and you have sort of an inside, maybe a fascinating take on it, now you can take an aspect of life and sort of recreate it in an interesting way that doesn't step on the toes of somebody else that's come before you.
Our next question is from Dale, Minnesota, and he would like to know the difference between an antagonist and a protagonist.
Okay, well, your protagonist is your character that you would want to root for. It may be a character that has faults or limitations of his or her own, but it's generally a character that we want to see achieve his or her goals by the end of the story. And your antagonist is usually the force or the person that is in the way of that goal or series of goals for the main character.
Our next question is from Twitter. Can you tell us some of the importance of dialogue and what are the pitfalls that I need to be looking for when I'm writing dialogue?
Well, dialogue advances story and plot. Hopefully at the same time, if you're writing appropriate dialogue for that moment in the scene or the story. The one pitfall that you want to be careful of is that film is a very visual medium. And so we want to not tell the story, we want to show and present that story. And so really the best dialogue at all is really no dialogue. You want to convey through body language, looks, expressions, camera movement, art direction. All of that will help to convey story and the emotion, the feeling of a scene. But when it's most efficient to get across character development and plot, then you will really retreat to dialogue, or it's really no other recourse but then to go into or delve into using dialogue at that stage.
So, like, what are some tips that I could go by to improve my dialogue writing?
When you want to interject dialogue into your story, the best thing that you could do is, again, engage life, really be that eavesdropper, listen in on other people's conversations and the word choice, the rhythm, the pattern of their speech. You want to take a look at films that are prior to the internet era. What's interesting about the top 100 films of all time, and then also the top 100 screenplays of all time, is that the majority of them are from an era prior to the age of the internet. And what's interesting is storytellers, script consultants, film gurus, if you will, they've been sort of hitting on a very key aspect with regards to dialogue, and that is that with the advent of the internet, we've sort of lost a little bit of the magic in terms of how we communicate with people. We don't use as interesting a sentence structure, or our vocabulary has become limited over time. So what you want to do to infuse some difference to your story is get in there and really listen to what characters are saying from films in the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, maybe even up to the 70s, but look to those classic films and listen for the differences in terms of how they lay out the dialogue and how characters interact with each other versus today's blockbuster films.
All right, we have a question from Facebook. Jeremy Malol, and I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong. He would like you to elaborate and explain the 3-act structure.
Simply speaking, the first act is the beginning of your story, and you want to really start after the beginning in what seems like the middle of your action. When you do that, automatically the audience is saying, hey, wait a minute, what's going on? Why am I behind here? And therefore you get an audience's interest right away. And if the screenwriter can stay several steps ahead of that audience member throughout the story, great. They won't see the puppet strings of your story at that point, right? So the beginning is you want to set up the character's situation, get across the goals and needs of that character through conflict, so that there's already something at stake in the opening moments of the film. And then the middle of the story, which is the bulk of the story, it's the hardest part to write because it's the longest portion of the story. That you want to just think about in terms of obstacles and complications in the way of the goal. If you focus on just that, you can keep us interested on this train that's heading somewhere. We don't know where we're going to go, right? But there's some interesting twists and polarity shifts from one scene to the next. And then the third act is the ending, essentially, of your film. What is that final polarity shift that we are going to end on? Are we going to end on a negative note, a positive note, or shades of all of that? There are really 4 different types of endings. 2 are positive, but one of those positives can be sort of muddied up a little bit by the fact that maybe the character they're trying to achieve a goal. They ultimately don't achieve that goal, but in the end they learn something more important along the way.
We had an email from Jonathan asking why are scripts formatted so specifically?
Why are they formatted so specifically? Well, it's really a secret calling card, script format. If you understand script format and the appropriate font, the appropriate size, where script elements go on a page, what you're doing when you submit that script is you're sort of creating the secret handshake with that other individual. It's a producer, another colleague or fellow screenwriter, studio executive, an actor perhaps that you're trying to get their interest in the story itself. You're showing them that you understand the technical side of the craft and even the history of the craft, because a lot of script format comes from history and tradition. The old-fashioned typewriters, we had just 2 or 3 different fonts at our disposal, and one of those fonts was Courier. And Courier is a very blocky kind of font. It spreads the information out across the page so that when you're skimming a script or you're new to the material, it's very easy to read those words on a page. And so if you come in there with Times New Roman or whatever the default is set for your word processor, you're showing somebody that you're somewhat of an amateur and you're on the outside looking in. And there are so many stories that are waiting to be read, that are just lined up on people's desks, that they're going to look for very, very easy ways to prioritize what script they should get to next.
Edward Colburn from Twitter wants to know, what are some common mistakes made by amateur writers?
Coming in without the proper font or format, and then blowing that first chance for a good solid impression, telling the story rather than showing the story. If we open up a script, and generally we want to skim through that script, and we're going to look for a feel for how much dialogue to action and description line. What is the ratio here? And you want to come in at about 60-40. At least 60% action and description lines to 40% dialogue. If there is more dialogue, then it's a harder sell because it's a dialogue-heavy type of project at that point, and that's enough of a red flag that certain people will look at and go, you know, how are we going to keep this interesting if we're constantly sharing the story through words rather than images? Just remember that it is a very visual medium, and you want to be pushing that story visually as much as possible.
Mike G would like to know, what are some good script writing softwares out there?
The 2 main ones would be Screenwriter 2000, Movie Magic Screenwriter 2000, and Final Draft. The difference between the 2, if you are focusing on just the screenwriting aspect, then typically you're going to want to gravitate towards Final Draft. If you're thinking screenwriter / I also want to produce, direct my own projects, then there are certain features of Movie Magic Screenwriter 2000 that will take elements from the script, how you've formatted that script, and start to plug it into some of the pre-production work, budgets, cast lists, that kind of thing. And so it's a little bit more full-featured from a pre-production and a production standpoint. And then failing those programs, if you want to go a less expensive route, obviously it would be making your own style sheet in Microsoft Word.
This is a good one. Chris Faulkner from Twitter would like to know, how do you get through writer's block?
Getting through writer's block, usually it requires getting away from the computer. The more that you are stuck there waiting for the night was, right? There's a great opening moment from Throw Mama from the Train, where we've got a character who's struggling. The night was what, you know? If you're stuck for a long time and it's starting to frustrate you, get away from the keys and go off and engage life. But you don't want to let it be really more than it is. You're blocked, so what? Really? I can get through this, right? I'm just going to get away from my story for a moment, think of something else, get engaged again, and then move forward from there. What's interesting with writing is that we're trying to engage with people, large masses of people at once, especially in the film business, and to do that, we really have to sort of hide away for long periods of our time. And so while we're actually physically writing, we're disassociating and disengaging from life, and so that's why that writer's block creeps in there. So it's just a matter of staying consistent with the amount of time you're spending on your work versus the amount of time that you're listening for that next bit of story magic that comes, walking down your street or at the table next to you, that kind of thing.
When they on patrol, gotta expose all the plights of the ghetto. Troubled childhood's memories can't let go. Screams of the innocent echo through the heart.
I'm extremely excited to have today's episode sponsored by my go-to source for all my videography and filmmaking gear. That's B&H Photo, Video, and Pro Audio, their professional source. B&H has been serving their millions of satisfied customers since before most of us were even born, which means they have a really good handle on what you need, so you won't have to go searching a ton of different sites just to find what you're looking for. Their intuitive website and enormous store are like Disneyland for the creative enthusiast. They house over 235,000 items in video, photo, and pro audio, which sounds a little bit like heaven. They also carry an assortment of computer equipment and accessories, as well as top-of-the-line home entertainment gear, so you can watch your films in the same high quality that you make them. So as most of you guys already know, I put together a gear list a few weeks back that you can find at revision3.com/deals_electronics. Now I recently made some additions, so go check that out and see the additions that I additioned. Now I custom built all these packages to fit each one of you. There's 3 for filmmaker and 3 for DSLR filmmaker, each one catering to a different budget and expertise. The recent update I just made includes a few especially sweet little babies dying for you to adopt them into your home. I'll also be adding some more over the next few weeks, so make sure you keep checking back at revision3.com's deals page. Once again, that's revision3.com/deals_electronics. Logo. Using the first page for my script tell, I'm going to walk you through the essentials you need to know to start writing your first script. Now I did this in Final Draft, although you can use Word or any other text document if you know the margins. I have done it before, but would never want to do it again. Final Draft just frees you up from all the technicals so you can focus on the creative and not be bogged down by all the formatting. First thing you need to do is to set up the margins for your page, and that's 1 inch at the top and bottom, 1.5 inches at the left, and 1.25 inches at the right.
Now every script starts with just 2 words. Fade in. In Final Draft, I'm just going to hit enter to bring up my elements, then hit T for transition, and it takes me right where I need to be. You can also see that as soon as I start typing, Final Draft will give me all the options so I can move quickly. Once I select fade in, I'll hit enter, and Final Draft will do all the work to set me up for what I need to do next. And that's my first scene heading. The scene heading is where you'll add the when and where info about your scene. So the first part will be to show whether I'm going to be interior, INT, or exterior, EXT. Now I'll hit tab, and I'm ready to place my location. Then I'll hit tab again, and Final Draft gives me all the options I have for the time of day. Now I'll hit enter, and I'm at my first action line. This is where you'll describe what is happening in the scene and who is in it, the main chunk of telling your story. Next, I want to add dialogue. With Final Draft, I'm just going to hit enter to bring up my elements again, and hit C to set up the first character cue, which is the character's name who is speaking. To add dialogue, I'll just hit enter, and I'm ready to start typing. Now to end your script, just type the end, all in caps and in the same spot as the character cue.
And now you have the bare minimum you need to know to start writing your first script. Now, if you would like to read the first page of my script tell, go and follow me on Twitter at twitter.com/Ryan_Conley. I'm going to be posting where you can find that first page in the next couple of days.
Squarespace is a publishing system for anyone looking to build a blog, portfolio, or any other kind of website. And Squarespace, being the amazing team that they are, have built Triune Films an incredible new site layout that we have just launched today. So now I can go in and adjust size, color, and positioning of all the elements of my site without having to know any coding at all. And they've made it insanely easy to keep all my content up to date as well. So check out TriuneFilms.com and leave a comment in the news section to let us know what you think. Then jump over to squarespace.com and get your site started. And if you do, don't forget to represent by using the promo code FilmRiot so you can get 10% off the life of your order.
And there you have it, our first episode with Full Sail, talking about screenwriting and tell. Next week, we're going to be covering the second half of screenwriting, which is what to do with it once you've finished writing. In the meantime, you can always email me any questions at filmriot@revision3.com. Also, you can follow me on Twitter at twitter.com/Ryan_Conley if you want to be able to read the first page of tell and stay up to date with all the other goings-ons of the production. And of course, there's the Facebook. You can head over there to find more resources on writing. And I'll see you next Thursday. Need a drink?
My foot fell asleep. Hey.
I'm giving you a verbal massage. What does that mean? I just had the most wonderful dream.
Like something in my eye. Wants to know, what are some of the best script writing softwares out there, and Is there like software? Wait, sorry.
I'm your host, Ryan Conley. Now I'm her Abitaba. Welcome to Film Riot.